Baltimore Orioles have been one of the surprise successes of the 2023 season, currently leading the AL East, which might be the toughest division in baseball this year, and are the first American League team to 90 wins. This comes with a little bit of a surprise just due to the sheer youth of their team. The Orioles have been known to be the next wave of young talent. They hoard it like crazy, and there's still a lot of that in the minor leagues right now, so people expected their window to be a couple years down the road. But right now, players like Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, Austin Hayes, Ramon Urias, and a whole wave of other young talent is currently carrying this team to what might be the number one seed in the American League come playoff time. Although much of their prospect depth is with position players, their pitching staff has really helped them a lot this year. They've taken Shintaro Fujinami from the Oakland A's and really turned him to a serviceable reliever, which the A's weren't able to unlock this year. People like Kyle Bradish have really carried their starting rotation really far, and Grayson Rodriguez, who was a former top 100 prospect, hasn't looked great, but he's definitely been very, very good recently, and could very easily see himself as a long reliever or even a starter in the postseason. Even Jack Flaherty, who struggled a little bit since being traded away from the Cardinals, could see himself making meaningful innings and potentially getting a couple wins come October. That pitching staff did take a little bit of a hit when Felix Bautista, their closer, went down, but that has allowed a new player to come in and step up as their closer, and he's really been a huge success this year for the Baltimore Orioles in a way that no one really expected. I'm, of course, talking about Yennier Cano, who they acquired from the Minnesota Twins last year at the trade deadline. But before we go on with the video, please go ahead and hit that baseball in the bottom right corner to subscribe and drop a like on the video. It really helps out a lot to grow this channel, and you'll get more baseball content like this. Cano might have had the best start to 2023 of any reliever of all time. Through his first 17 appearances, he put up insane numbers. He faced 67 batters during those first 17 appearances. He didn't walk a single player, he didn't allow a single run, and only allowed 4 hits. That means for the first 67 people he faced, he sent a grand total of 63 of them back to the dugout, and only 4 people reached base at all. You could very realistically argue that this is the best 17-game stretch of pitching by any reliever in the history of Major League Baseball, and this came in Cano's first full season, so it really is impressive that he was able to do this. He is 29.5 right now, so he's not some young spry guy, but he still has a lot of potential coming out of Cuba in 2017, and he really does seem to be a foundational piece for the Orioles to build around, and especially because this is only his first full season, they have him for very cheap for a long time, and he has a couple more years before he even hits arbitration. So he's most likely going to be a mainstay in an Orioles bullpen that looks to compete for a World Series for the next half decade at minimum. The tagline for this video is that the Orioles basically got this guy for free. So how did that end up happening? You're probably familiar with Jorge Lopez, who was the Orioles closer for a couple years, was an all-star back in 2022, and ended up getting traded at the deadline to the Twins, and Cano was part of the return package that they got for Jorge Lopez. In this video, we're going to examine a little bit more about that trade and see how the Orioles ended up coming full circle and really winning this trade when a lot of people thought that the Twins ended up with a highway robbery. That just goes to show you how quickly a trade can turn on a dime, and you never know what a year down the road is going to look like. Aaron Gleeman, who covers the Twins for The Athletic and used to be part of the Baseball Prospectus team, noted back when the trade happened that 2.5 seasons of Jorge Lopez was not worth what the Twins gave up, and the Orioles probably should have gotten a little bit more, especially given that Lopez had so much control left. However, this has really kind of soured, and the easiest way to go and look about this is looking at how good the number 20 prospect Gleeman mentioned in the trade has become. As I mentioned earlier, Yennier Cano was never the centerpiece of the steal. The main guy coming back was going to be Cade Povich, who was the Twins' 3rd-round draft pick in the 2021 MLB draft. He wasn't a highly touted player coming out of high school and ended up having to go to junior college in Arizona before transferring to Nebraska because he really showed out in junior college and caught the attention of scouts at the D1 level. He really blossomed at Nebraska, became an all-conference starter in 2021, and that's part of the reason why he rose all the way up to the 3rd round. He did really well in a small sample size in 2022 at High A before he ended up getting traded to the Orioles, and that was probably part of the reason why they were so excited to go get him. Povich is a lefty who doesn't have a true dominating pitch. All his pitches are about average. He has a nice 4-pitch mix of a fastball, a curveball, a slider, and a changeup. I think if you had to kind of grade them out evenly, a changeup might be a tick above the rest and the curveball a little bit below the rest. But beyond that, he can throw all of his pitches for strikes, and I think his control is part of the reason why scouts are really excited about his potential and why on MLB Pipeline he's currently their 2nd-rated pitching prospect in all the Orioles system. That plus control really showed for the Bowie Bay Sox this year, which are the Orioles AA affiliate, as he had pitched to 81 in a 3rd innings and struck out a whopping 118 batters. So he's really doing a very good job of striking people out as a starter. He got promoted to AAA. He's pitched in 8 games so far and has been hit a little bit harder, and that strikeout rate is a little bit down, only 39 strikeouts to 34 in the third inning. So that number has dropped a little bit, but that's to be expected when you make a jump like that. So it's not something I'd be too worried about. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. But Cade Povich is someone with a lot of potential and something the Orioles are really excited about. Around the industry, people are excited about him too. Fangraphs has him at the Orioles' fifth ranked prospect, so there is a lot of potential there. And they have him as their number one pitching prospect as well. And that really kind of makes sense because he has a very strong command of everything he has, and he's started to add a little bit of a cutter to his action as well to add a fifth pitch. There's a lot to be excited about. His fastball isn't super fast. It can flash 96 maybe at the beginning of a game, 95, probably sit around 92, 93 in the long run, but the ability to throw strikes and have some really good pitches go along with it, his sweeping slider, which again isn't a great pitch, but has enough break and has enough potential to be a solid pitch in the future, a new cutter, a really good curveball that plays off well in terms of the deception, in terms of timing. It's a lot slower than the rest of his pitches. So he has a lot of stuff to get going well, and his mechanics are solid and repeatable. So there's a lot of potential for him to be a solid player. Could he end up in the bullpen? Maybe, potentially, because he has those good mechanics. But I think in the long run, his end goal is going to be as a starter, maybe as a 3 or 4 at his peak, maybe as a swingman kind of guy at minimum. But I think if you look at where the Orioles are now and their pitching, I could very easily see him taking over for Cole Irvin, who's currently that fifth starter / long reliever role, easily in the beginning of 2024, and push for a rotation spot sometime by the middle of the year as injuries hit, and probably be a starter by the start of 2025 if things go perfectly. I wouldn't be shocked if he even claims a rotation spot in 2024, but I think just given the depth the Orioles have, they don't need to rush him to the big leagues because they do have some decent pitching depth. He hasn't had great peripheral numbers in AAA yet. His ERA is above 6 right now, so there's not looking great in terms of that regard. But I think giving him a little bit more time, he doesn't need to make the 40-man roster this year in order to be protected from the Rule 5 draft. He's good in that regard. So I think there's a decent chance that he stays in the minor leagues a little bit. But if he has a good spring training, I wouldn't be shocked to see him potentially make the opening day roster. And you never know what can happen from there. Cade Povich is someone to be really excited about, and I think Oriole fans know and understand that if they're following the minor league system. The Orioles also sniped Juan Nunez from the Twins, who signed with Minnesota for just $25,000 in November 2019. He didn't throw a pitch professionally until 2021 because the 2019 season ended and the 2020 season was canceled due to the pandemic, so no minor league baseball was played at all. He played well in the Dominican Summer League, but ended up getting traded to the Orioles before he could go ahead and make the jump to the U.S., but pitched really well and ended up going and making the jump to High A Aberdeen by the time the 2023 season has come to a close. He has a plus fastball, which is probably his best pitch by far, which is really impressive considering he's only 5'11" and only weighs 190 pounds. So the fact he's able to go and throw a fastball in the mid-90s and really be consistent about that is something that, any pitcher his height would be really impressed to be with. Because of his size, he's most likely not going to end up in a starting role in the major leagues. That's just part of it. You look at guys like Tim Lincecum, who have really changed that revolution, but for the most part, he's not going to end up as a starter, most likely. He also needs to refine his command a little bit, which is what you see a lot with pitchers who are starters for most of their career move to the bullpen. I think Alex Lange, who used to be a great pitcher for the SU Tigers, is now the closer for the Detroit Tigers. That's exactly what happened to him, and look at him dominate now. So I think this is a similar career trajectory where he's going to end up in the bullpen. I'm not saying he's going to be a star closer, but I think he'll have a solid role in a bullpen that could use as much help as it can get, as any major league club can. Pitchers get hurt a lot, so the more depth you have, the better, and I think Juan Nunez will be a serviceable piece there. He has a solid slider. A changeup isn't great, but it's serviceable and will help get people off balance just due to the difference in speed. And that's definitely helped by the fact that he does have that mid-90s fastball. So he has a lot of potential there. So he's not someone that's going to shoot up prospect ranks just because he is limited by his size and the fact it's only a 3-pitch mix, which I think is perfectly suited for a bullpen role. So that's just my opinion on him. That could change as he goes and progresses up. But he's done decently enough in his 2023 campaign. Both times in High A and Single A this year, he has an ERA below 4. He's striking out a lot of batters. For example, in Single A this year, 72 batters across 55 innings. In High A, a little bit less efficient, 53 and 49 and 2/3 innings pitched. So that has dropped a little bit, but he's still a plus pitcher. I think he has a lot of potential. And it's someone that Orioles fans should be excited about to see pitch, hopefully in Camden Yards sometime soon. I could see that happening maybe at the beginning of 2025. I see him more as a September call-up in 2025, and that's right in the Orioles' competitive window, so I think this is a perfect timing situation. The guy's only 22. He's still young. A lot of time to develop and grow. So I think there's a lot of potential with him as well. The last player is Juan Rojas, who there isn't a lot of video of, so I'm going to keep this very short. He pitched really well in rookie ball this year at age 19, a 2.7 ERA across 6.5 innings pitched. Gotten beaten up a little bit in AA, 25 in a third inning pitch, a 6.4 ERA, but he has struck out 21 batters, so he's doing okay. Nothing to write home about. Right now he's starting, but he has the potential to be a solid piece in the future. Nothing to write home about, but he could be a good player in the future. This trade doesn't happen for free unless something happens to Jorge Lopez to get him back in Baltimore, and just a year later, that's exactly what happened. He was really good in Baltimore in 2022, as I mentioned, as an all-star, pitching to a 1.68 ERA, but once he got shipped up to the Twin Cities, that ERA skyrocketed to a 4.37. He just really did not do great. And in 2023, that number got worse, pitched to a 5.09 ERA in Minnesota before getting traded to the Miami Marlins at the trade deadline for Dylan Floro in a basically idea to just see if a different situation works for them, and it obviously didn't. He pitched for 12 games with the Marlins to a 9.26 ERA and a 2.48 whip. That is just not good by any stretch of the imagination. So obviously Miami decided, we're not going to do this. You pitched in 12 games. Your 2-0 record is not indicative of what you've been doing. We're going to cut bait and just hope that you have luck somewhere else. The Orioles came back, swooped him up in 4 games. He hasn't been doing much better. A 1.8 whip, a 5.4 ERA. But he's back in his home ballpark, and the Orioles are really good at developing pitchers, so we'll see how this all turns out. I think it's unfair to write him off after it's only been a year since he used to be what was considered potentially the best closer in all of baseball to now being a far cry from that. But I'm also not giving him too much of the benefit of the doubt. He hasn't looked great since joining the Twins, and that struggle has continued even now that he's back in Baltimore. We'll see how this goes, but it's not looking great for Jorge Lopez in the future. I hope he can get back together. He is a very good piece, but I just don't see it happening in the long run for him. As I mentioned at the top of this video, a lot of people thought that this trade was going to be a huge win for the Twins, and wow, has it backfired. The Twins could really use someone like Jorge Lopez in the back end of their bullpen to help out Yon Duran and really just solidify a team that is most likely going to win the AL Central, and although it's a weaker division, you never know what happens when you make the playoffs. Having someone like Jorge Lopez would have been a huge addition to their bullpen, and now he's with the AL leading Baltimore Orioles once again. The Orioles literally gave away a year of control to a guy who really did not do well outside of Camden Yards and got him back for free. They added in what might be the best setup man in all of baseball once Felix Bautista comes back in, Yennier Cano, and Cade Povich is a top 11 prospect for one of the deepest farm systems in all of baseball. He would most likely be a top 10 prospect in a lot of other systems, and if you look at a lot of the weaker systems, he's probably a top 5 prospect, even if not higher. There's a lot of potential with Cade Povich to be a solid contributor at the major league level, and we haven't even talked about the two Juans and Nunez and Rojas. Nunez could definitely become a serviceable reliever in the long run, and who knows what can happen with Juan Rojas. He's only 19. He's doing decently in single A, and a lot of things can happen to a young player who's really pitching to talent that's above his level right now, especially now that a lot of these draft picks have come up and they're playing in single A and high A straight out of college and are a couple years older than him and have faced more advanced pitching than Juan Rojas. So a couple more years of experience, and Juan Rojas could be a very serviceable piece, and same goes for Juan Nunez. I think the Orioles definitely won this trade in hindsight. There's no doubt about that now, especially seeing how the Jorge Lopez situation has panned out, and that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Thank you all for watching this video. It really means a lot. Go ahead and hit that baseball in that bottom middle if you are interested in subscribing, getting more content like this. And 2 videos are appearing on both sides of the screen. Go ahead and hit one of those if they interest you. There are more videos that I have made, and hopefully you enjoyed them just as much as you enjoyed this one. Thank you again. It really means a lot for you to watch this video all the way through, and I hope to see you next time.